Warning, this podcast has stories of real-life events and true crime that happens every day. These stories may contain adult language and graphic or disturbing details not suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
132 in Bush, I've got him at gunpoint. Check the left phone for going to full evacuation on your side. They're pulling them out.
10-1-1. Advise ready for entry camp.
God!
Welcome to another episode of War Stories. I'm Tom.
And I'm Chuck.
How are you, my friend?
Been better. But we can talk about that. And I know you've been rushing around, so I don't think you've seen it. But Marco's good for tonight, so I think we should go live tonight on Locker Room. So if you're listening.
But this episode doesn't release today. So
we're going to go live anytime we go. We release.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. Yes. If you're hearing
matter what day it is,
you're going live tonight.
Yeah. So he said he's good. I mean, it's the only day that I think we can all be together because I leave tomorrow. So we can talk about the way that I look.
What do you want to go? I know you look like AJ from the Backstreet Boys.
I look crazy. I just need some pierced ears.
What are you doing? Well, no, let's save it for Locker Room.
Yeah. We can get into this. It's crazy. It's a crazy story.
Yeah. But if you're listening to this, the live episode that you're going to hear tonight, we will have already talked about Chuck's mustache. So if you heard us talk about Chuck's mustache, that's what we were just talking about.
Right. We'd be like, oh my God, that was 3 weeks ago or a month ago.
Right.
Or
well,
a month and a half.
But we have a very interesting, so we're departing a little bit for today's guest. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not something that we've had on before. I think that it's going to be really good because we both, I think mental health is not talked about, and it's a big taboo subject, especially in law enforcement, military, and first response, like firefighters and stuff like that, and EMTs and paramedics.
Oh yeah, because you're going to lose your job.
Right. So I think that's going to be really good to talk about today. And not to mention our guest has had dude, her resume is crazy. Let me just go ahead and introduce her. Okay. Today in War Stories podcast, we are honored to welcome a very special guest, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Dr. Lieberman is a board-certified psychiatrist with both an MD and an MPH, and she's internationally recognized for her work in trauma, terrorism, and psychological impact of violence. She's a familiar face and voice in the media, often called on by outlets like Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, to bring her expertise and unapologetic perspectives to the toughest issues of our time. But what really stands out is her outspoken support of law enforcement and her commitment to telling the truth about the challenges our officers face every day. I'm doing this with my hand because I feel like a politician. On today's episode, we'll dive into the realities of trauma and mental health and policing, the pressures officers face in today's anti-cop climate, and what can be done to better support the men and women behind the badge. Dr. Lieberman, thank you for joining us today on War Stories Podcast.
It's my pleasure.
All right.
Well, that is a man. How much school? How many years total?
That's a lot of years.
Well,
right?
That's 4 years of college, right? Then 7 years of 7 years of med school because I went to medical school in Europe. Sorry.
Okay. Where did you go to medical school in Europe?
I went to medical school at the University of Louvain in Belgium.
Okay. Oh, Belgium. Okay. Do you wait, hold on. Parlez-vous français?
Oui.
Very good. I'm tapped out. I can also call you a little cabbage head or ask you out on a date. Yes, right. Bonjour.
Well, I don't know anything cool about France, but I'm going there tomorrow.
Oh, great. Well, actually, I ended up at Louvain because I had asked someone who was a medical educator what was the best school in Europe for medical school where they speak French, because I had taken French in elementary school, all the way through school up through college.
Wow.
And so that's how I got to Louvain. But I got a little bored after 3 years in Belgium, and so I moved to Paris. I lived in Paris for 3 years, and I was commuting to go continue with school. And so, what was the question again? So,
oh no, I was just saying how many years?
How many years? That's right. Because I was starting to say that medical school in America is 4 years, but in Louvain, in most European schools, it's 7 years. And
okay.
So it's 4 years of college, 7 years of medical school. Then I got my license, my MD license and all that. And I moved to California from New York. And I got a master's in public health at UCLA. So that was 3 years. So, 4 and 7 and 3 is 14, right?
Right. So that's a lot.
Let me count on my hands and my toes real quick.
That's true. Get some crayon. Well, don't eat them. Get some pens. As I look at it, so Beverly Hills psychiatrist, but you're also known as the terrorist therapist, and I can see how the two are related. But I want. So if you look up Dr. Carol Lieberman and you see the terrorist therapist, yes, that's correct. That's who she is. But I want to clarify. I did read where you say you are not a therapist for terrorism.
Right. Yes, I have to clarify that, right? I wouldn't mind putting one of them or more on my couch. But no, I just use that title to refer to the help that I give people for coping with terrorism, and also warning people about the ongoing danger of terrorism, which people seem to have forgotten about and are in denial about.
Oh yeah. And you've written a book, and it's in your it's that little thing you got under there. It's the Lions and Tigers and Terrorists. Oh my! How to protect your child in a time of terror. So before we move on to the kind of nitty gritty stuff, I wanted to ask you what's the gist of this book. You say this is how to talk to your kids and keep them safe. And so, in a nutshell, if you can, what is your philosophy on why and how to talk to kids about terrorism? Is there a reason you think that? Is it because the 24-hour news cycle, kids are constantly inundated with images and terrorism and worrying about 9/11 and a post 9/11 generation? Is that why people are needing to talk to kids?
Yes, that, but also the fact that we are in more danger now of terror attacks than we were right before 9/11. So, it's not just to sort of understand something that happened in the past, although of course that's important too, because this was a key event in America. You really need to understand all of that in order to go forward. But also because there are terrorist cells all over America. There are terrorists who have been climbing the ladder in media and education and politics. And what people don't understand is that, I'm sure you guys know this, but the average person doesn't realize the mentality behind terrorists, that this is not something they woke up right before 9/11 and thought, this would be fun. Why don't we go, run some planes into buildings?
Right.
No. They have been planning this for over 1,000 years to take over the West.
Right.
And they've already been taking over Europe. Right now, England especially is just gone.
Oh God, it's terrible.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. And they have Sharia law, I think I mispronounced it, Sharia law, in a lot of these different areas in the UK, and it's crazy. And if you go to like Minnesota or Michigan, they have really big communities and shit. One of the biggest training camps for terrorism, I believe, is in the Midwest, and I want to say it's in Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that, but it's in the Midwest somewhere, and it's known by the FBI. It's on a watch list. They're watching it, but there is a lot of refugees that are living in those areas, and they're bringing a lot of that strict Islamic ideology there from where they came from, and that doesn't really jive with everybody else.
Yes.
And I agree with. I'll tell you this is where I get into it with people. I try to help them understand the difference between, the Judaism, the religion, right? Judaism, the ethnicity, and Israel, the nation, right? And there's so many different things to unpack there, but ultimately, as part of that, understanding of how all of that works, you gotta. I always tell people you have to understand that you can't rationalize or reason with 21st century logic with people that are fighting an 11th century war, right? This is
fucking
ideologically so ingrained in it. It's part of their DNA, the fabric of their existence, to fight this fight and do these things. That there's no hugs and there's no. That's not how it works, right?
They've been fighting before Moses,
right? Well,
and also, there are madrasas, and they teach kids, 3-4 years old. They start teaching them about why they have to hate Israel, destroy Israel, and kill Jews. But it's not just Jews, and it's not just Israel. It's all non-believers, all infidels, all those who don't believe in God.
We had a kid in our academy class. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we had a kid in our academy class. And I think this is very fitting. And he came up. They're like, "Hey, tell us a little bit about yourself." It was like going around the classroom and, "Hey, tell us where you're from, a little bit about yourself." And he's like, "I'm from Iran, and I now have citizenship here. And I grew up chanting 'Death to America,' and I didn't like that, so I wanted to leave." And me and my family, I'm like, "You could have left that part out, bud." But it goes to show you that everybody, when they're young kids in those areas, in those strong, strict Islamic areas, they are bred to, and I'm not trying to be racist or anything like that, but it's just from what's coming from the horse's mouth. It's statistics and facts that they are born in and bred in to believe death to America, death to Israel from grade school. In their whole life. So it's crazy. And I know, to be quite honest, I didn't really trust the kid. And that's just when he made that statement. I was like, you didn't have to make that statement. And I'm like, how do you trust someone that shit's been ingrained in their whole life growing up? And he left like middle school time and was able to get his citizenship. And I do know that there are a lot of Christians in like Syria and stuff like that. And God bless them. They are true believers because they are being prosecuted. Our nanny, she's from Syria and her family lives in Syria. And they're all Christian. And I didn't know that until we had a conversation. I was like, "Oh, you have the same beliefs that I do." And our bond got stronger. And she's a great person. But it's crazy that those places, it's ingrained to hate Christians. It's ingrained to hate Israel. It's ingrained to hate the United States. And going back to what you guys were saying, that how much terrorism is in the United States. And now Tom is a cop. He's retired. I'm a retired cop. I worked LA. And I don't know, Tom, if you came across a bunch of these, just because of the area that you were in, it was more like probably cartel and drug interdiction. But the area that I was in, every single day I would get a hit, maybe twice a day. And it was a terrorist on an FBI watch list or wanted for terrorism, but we couldn't pull him over. And we would get that return back on our screen, letting us know, "Hey, this dude's a bad dude, but you can't pull him over for this. Do not let him know that he's on this list."
Oh, you couldn't pull him over because he's on the list?
Well, because he's wanted, but he's being watched. He's on a watch list, or he's associated with terrorism. But just because of that fact, we're not allowed to just stop and detain him and search him and all this stuff, because it's just, hey, we're watching him. And I don't know why the return would come back like that. I guess just for information. Hey, this dude's a bad dude.
I can tell you a little bit. We can talk about that later. But
because you're a TLO.
Yeah, I was a terrorism liaison officer, and it's similar to a drug arrest, right? If there's an active investigation, you don't want to pull them over because you don't want to spook them. There's a bigger issue, right? But Dr. Lieberman, you deal with, in your practice, do you deal more with civilians who are anxious about terrorism and the threats that it's causing, or what caused you to get into the space that you're in with terrorism and being aware of it?
Yes, no, it didn't have anything to do with my patients. I'm a born and bred New Yorker. And when 9/11 happened, I was in California already. And, but it was, my heart is still in New York, really. And so it felt very personal. Also, I kind of had this realization, even though I didn't know very much about terrorism, when 9/11 happened, I like practically nothing. But I had this realization, this sense that the terrorism was going to be the most dangerous, biggest threat to our lives in the lifetime of anyone who was alive at that time. And of course, I still think that. And I mean, it's, COVID is bad, but it's not. This is an ongoing thing that never ends. And there aren't any drugs that you can take to push terrorists away. But so I asked myself, what could I do to help people with this big threat? And as I was an author already, a television personality, commentator, radio commentator, media commentator, basically. I did speaking engagements, and of course I had patients. And so I thought, putting all these things together, I wanted to do something to help this ongoing. I knew for the rest of my life, this would be an ongoing threat. And so I wanted to help people with that. And so the first thing I did was I created an audio video program that airlines played in their in-flight entertainment to help people, because remember, everybody was so afraid to fly.
Right.
So this was to help people to, I used guided imagery, that kind of technique.
Oh, okay.
And they, domestic and foreign airlines had this in their in-flight entertainment. And then at the same time, I started, first of all, I started learning a lot about terrorism because in order to be able to help people. And I started sort of planning a book. And my first book about terrorism was in 2005. It came out in 2006. It was for a London publisher, and it was for their 9/11, which was 7/7/2005. And so the book came out as the first anniversary edition of 7/7, and I went over there to England and so on, and talked to people, did a lot of media work and all that, and then afterwards I wrote The Lions and Tigers and Terrorists. That's more recent. That came out in 2017, but the first book was called Coping with Terrorism: Dreams Interrupted. And it looked at everything. It looked for children and teenagers and your work life, your love life, everything that terrorism affects. And then I, in 2017, I specifically, targeted children because parents aren't explaining terrorism to kids, and they need to understand it. And the thing is, when we're not having any attacks, we didn't have any attacks for a long time recently because of COVID, because we weren't outside in the streets or at concerts and things. So there was nothing for terrorists to attack. But this is, of course, is changing. There are more terrorists now in America than before. Also, the 80,000 that came in from Afghanistan, when Biden.
Right. Don't get me started.
Yes, I know. Anyhow, so they brought in 80,000 Afghans because supposedly Afghans were helping us, translate things and all that. But they didn't have, in this chaos, they couldn't possibly have vetted 80,000 Afghans. And so now they are in America, and I'm sure some of them are terrorists.
No, they're all fine. They're all fine. Totally fine. It's fine. Well, go ahead.
So in other words, there are going to be more attacks, and kids are not going to have a clue, what it's about.
Yeah.
Well, and so then I would love to hear your thoughts on, because this is more in the space that I'm in, is so when I talk to people about teaching school age kids about active attack, lockdown, all that kind of stuff, and then we talk about doing drills, right? And inevitably, I will get people in the educational space that are very empathetic people. They obviously are empathetic people. They are caring people. That's one of the reasons they got into education, is they care about kids, hopefully. And yet we talk about, doing these drills, and you're talking about teaching kids about terrorism, right? And the pushback I get is, well, you're traumatizing them by talking to them about it. And then I go back and I say, and Chuck, let me try this experiment on you real quick.
Sure.
What do you do if you catch on fire?
Stop, drop, and roll.
Okay, great. So you proved my point. My point to these people is you are comfortable talking to kids about what to do if they spontaneously combust.
Right.
Yeah.
But for some reason, you think it's bad to talk to them about doing lockdowns for an active attack, or how to prepare for it, or how to talk to your kids, or talking to your kids about what terrorists are and what that's all about. Where do you land on in that? How do you kind of present that to people when they push back on, why are you talking to kids about this?
Yes.
And what is a terrorist in your eyes? Because so many people think of terrorists as the Allah Akbar dude who just wants to blow people up, and that's so far from what
by definition, a terrorist is anyone who commits violence for political reasons.
Social, yes, to make a change in society. Yes. What I am talking about, the radical Islamist dudes, the ones with the guns around their belly and all that.
Yeah.
I call them not so smart bombs. I call them not so smart bombs.
But now when you were just talking about, I assume that you were talking about the drills for school shooters, right?
Well, and again, we talk about it, but in the sense that it's not the space for an active attack. You're talking about, depending on what the motive is, right? Most people that would go into a school and start committing an active attack are not doing it for jihad or necessarily the Islamic jihad purposes. But we have seen people who their ideology does drive them to commit an active attack on a school. But it doesn't have to be a school. It could be a workplace. It could be a house of worship.
Right.
Anything that's capable of being actively attacked and people are vulnerable, a terrorist, a jihadist, or whoever can attack it. And so how do you overcome pushback from churches or school groups? But
it's two different things. In my opinion, I am not, first of all, when it comes to school shooters, kids, get to see all of this on television. It's not like you're telling them something new as compared to a jihadist who, where, they may not, depending upon when they were born and all that, they may not have seen that on television, or not a lot, or not to the same degree, or not related to it in the same way. So I actually, for schools, I am not really a big believer in the drills in schools where, they put the kids in the closets and all that kind of stuff. Although I am sure, that it does save some lives. But there are things that should be done that could save lives from school shooters that would be much better. Like, first of all, kids who are going to become school shooters have a pattern. There's a pattern. Well, I'm sure you know this, but there's a pattern to them. First of all, they're raised in a dysfunctional family where there's abuse and/or neglect. They are obsessed with violent video games, playing violent video games. They have some kind of mental health problem that doesn't get addressed or doesn't get addressed sufficiently. And then there is some tip-off, something that some final tripper, final thing that makes catalyst that we can say that. Yes, good. And so, but at least I think it depends on how it's done. But in some of the ways that I've seen it done, it does seem like it scares the kids more. I know there are earthquake drills, like in California, we have earthquake drills.
Sure.
And there were fire drills, yes, in school, when I was in school in New York. But I just think that the school shooter drill, I don't know, maybe because it's becoming so much more prevalent these days. It's like, did you hear about the one?
The good news is the numbers are on the decrease. The good news is the numbers are actually on the decrease. And yes, the also good news is, like, So when you get into that space, what you're talking about as far as the signs and symptoms is what I was saying earlier, which is I'm into the behavioral threat assessment space. And while, we talk about video games, or we talk about ADHD medication, or we talk about, psychotropic drugs and psychiatric meds, and we talk about mental health conditions, we talk about all that kind of stuff. And what's crazy is that as much as we might try to solve that Rubik's Cube of what's that magic combination that makes someone violent, right? Carol, if you and I could write that book, we'd be bazillionaires, right? But what you have to, for me and for my people and my discipline, is we have to look at the behavior of the person to identify not if they are of the mindset, or are they because they're playing video games and they listen to heavy metal music and their dad is an alcoholic, we have to do this or do that or the other thing. We look for leakage, right? Are they obsessed with guns? Are they talking about other shooters? Are they obsessed with Hitler? So we look at these behavioral things that are all those hallmarks, and we try to analyze these potential shooters from the lens of what have they done down the road, and how far down that road are they, and how do we intervene and take them off of that path, which it's so hard because it's an unknowable thing. You can't know how many people you have prevented from going down that path. It's an unknowable, quantity. But in your space, right, the talking to kids about terrorism, I mean, they're seeing it on the news every day, just like they're seeing the active attacks. They're seeing. Do you get people that want to understand why, or why should I talk to my kids about this?
Yes,
right?
Yes. Yes. I mean, for example, when in my book, there's, did I mention this, that half of the book is for grown-ups and the second half is a picture book for kids. Like, what is a terrorist? So, for example, it says a terrorist is like a bully on the playground. He wants you to do, he wants you to follow his instructions. He wants you to do what he wants you to do. And I say it a little more literary. It's a little more literary than what I'm saying right now. But the gist of it is, he wants you to do what he wants. Just like terrorists want you to do what they want, and I actually go into, that their religion tells them that they should do this, that they, they're and all that. And but now, so the pushback. Well, I can explain it in a couple of different ways. One is like when I go to book festivals and I have the book on a table, and so people come up and they look at it, and of course the half that's for kids, the illustrated part, that's more interesting. So they look at some of these pictures, and I have some picture of the terrorists in the Middle East. I mean, there are pictures that I have a picture of Osama bin Laden. He's the most famous terrorist. All kinds of. I have stuff about the shoe bomber and the underwear bomber, and like all the highlights of terrorism.
Soon your pictures are going to end up being guys who are dressed as girls calling themselves women and go by the pronouns of she and her, or her and she, or whatever, because most of the stuff that I'm seeing nowadays to push an ideology is a lot of people who have, I believe, mental illness, where they don't understand or they don't know who they are as a person, and they don't love themselves the way God created them. And they're like, well, I'm a guy, but now I want to be a girl. And we've seen so many people attempt shootings, one on our president, when on Donald Trump, before he became the 47th president. You see all these other schools these shootings at churches.
Who are you talking about? Which one?
Oh, the one who the man who tried to shoot Donald Trump at the rally, who went by pronouns of she and her, and then all the other shootings.
Pennsylvania, are you talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that those pictures are going to change, and I think we're in such a turbulent time.
Yes, but that's a different thing. That's totally different. A terrorist in a way, but but that's not what I'm concentrating on. I mean, so try to answer your question, so people get shocked when they see some of these pictures. You're going to show the kids this, you're going to tell them about this, blah, blah, blah. And then they start to read it a little bit and they realize, yes, this is important. And then when I was in London, I went on the show Good Morning Britain. And there were the two women who were the hosts, and they had this attitude: you're gonna talk to kids about terrorism. They're 5 years old. They need to know about terrorism, and
Yes.
isn't this destroying their minds? And I said, first of all, this was when I was there had been some fairly recent terror attacks in London, and I said they see these things on television. And of course so you can't just pretend that they don't exist. But the way I describe it is that talking about terrorism is the 20th century or 21st century birds and the bees talk. It's something that parents are uncomfortable about. It's awkward, but it's a fact of life. And so that just like you have to talk about sex, you have to talk about terrorism.
Well, I think now a lot of the times it's regarding they're more worried about, we're going to offend someone because we might be racist or whatever, because we think of terrorists as a Muslim or whatever, and in fact a terrorist cannot be a Muslim. They could be someone who believes in the Islamic faith or whatever, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be of that nationality. They have to be of that skin color or whatever. It's
not all terrorists are Islamists.
No,
and not all Islamists are terrorists.
Right, and that's an important conversation that has to happen.
Right. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
And I do a podcast, the Terrorist Therapist Show, and I always try to say that at least once, on the show, what you just said.
Right.
Well, and also there's so many things there. You can get into what particular variation of Islam do you follow? Are you Sunni? Are you Shia? Like, there's so many different things. It's as deep as saying the people that do the stuff that the Westboro Baptist Church does is representative of all Christians, and that is patently false, right?
Right.
We know that to be true. And in fact, I would argue as a Christian man that the Westboro Baptist Church's activities are patently unchristian. The same way, I would argue a lot of things are. But in this situation, you're talking about terrorists, you're talking about people, and you're in your case talking about specifically about jihadists, right? And so these people, unlike Chuck, what you're talking about, I think, with the pronouns has more to do with this kind of
pushing a specific ideology,
right? And it's a terrorism for an ideology, but understanding what's driving that bus is a little harder to unpack right now versus what Dr. Lieberman's talking about, because I think with the jihadists, you can point to Mickey Mouse cartoons. Like they literally have children's shows where a doctored fake, they don't care about trademarks. They're trademarking infringement on Disney. Yeah, they're going to blow people up. They're not going to care about trademarks. So they use Mickey Mouse and they create a children's television show where the Mickey Mouse sings songs about how anybody who's not from Islam, specifically Jews, is lower than a dog. They're not human. They're other. And so from an early age, the indoctrination and it dehumanizes everybody. It is so much easier to commit violence against someone when you've dehumanized them, right? Am I wrong, Doc?
Absolutely. They use all of those things. They do games and songs, and I mean, they make these things very entertaining, and it's play.
Propaganda.
Yes, and that's how they kind of dehumanize and also, take the sting out of it. This isn't violence. This is play. And besides, we're doing this for our God,
Right.
So, but that's an interesting thing. I don't know what you think about it. This whole idea that they're thinking about a ban on guns for transgenders. Did you hear about that?
Yes. So that's a whole other topic.
That's a can of worms that
I am
holy crap.
that I'm all about Like, I'm such a libertarian that I'm about everybody has their rights to do what they want to do. My grandfather used to tell me, do whatever you want, just don't do it in the street and scare the horses, right? What you do in the privacy of your home between two consenting adults is your business. Once you step out of your home on the street, you start doing it on the street, it's our business, right?
Right.
That's kind of my philosophy in life. Now, I do recognize that I'm not so libertarian that I don't think we should pay taxes, because I know we need roads. I know we need fire departments. I know we need police departments, right? But at the same time, this is the slippery slope I always point to, and it happens on both sides, right? Again, not all transgender people are going to pick up a gun and start shooting. But is there a component which people have talked about, where the common sense gun legislation always says red flag laws, right? If somebody is experiencing mental illness, if somebody is experiencing a mental health crisis, we can restrict their ability to purchase a firearm. And a lot of people said, yes, that's common sense. We should do that. And now when somebody says, which includes trans people because they're mentally ill, all of a sudden people are like, time out. No. And we're like, wait a minute. Which is it? Is it all mentally ill people should be prohibited from buying a gun until they're able to prove they're safe, or all mentally ill people except trans? Well, that's the debate of, well, you have to tell me that trans people are mentally ill and da 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 da. So I think that's where you get into the weeds on that, right?
It's a slippery slope.
Yes, it is. And I actually am not for banning transsexuals from having guns, banning guns for transsexuals, because although, first of all, with transsexuals, not all transsexuals are the same.
No,
there are some who are
like not all gays are the same.
Right. There are some who are authentically gay, authentically transsexual, and so on, because that's the hormones in their mother's body when they were in the womb were a certain way, and their relationship with their mother and their father when they were little growing up was a certain way, and that put them on the path to be authentically LGBTQ+. But today, that really is a minority of LGBTQ+. Most of them have been fed a bill of goods, where convinced that, if you're unhappy, I know why that is. All you have to do is change your sex. You don't have to be what you were born as. Just be this or that or that, and they become confused. And so I don't know that you could say that they're all mentally ill either. I mean, the thing is, when they are absolutely belligerent about, when a man is absolutely belligerent, I am a woman, you have to call me by my female pronouns and all that, that gets a little delusional, that gets
forcing other people to call a potato a tomato is a bit crazy.
There's a difference between how Bruce Caitlin is handling her gender transition, and how 90% of the people on social media who go into GameStop and yell at the guy behind the counter to call them ma'am, right? Like Bruce Caitlin is saying, no, women and men should not compete in sport. Like, he is acknowledging that he is still a man, even though he wants to live as a woman, right? Or she. And if she wants to get that kind of surgery and have all those kind of alterations, like I said, whatever you want to do. But ultimately, let's be honest. And I think if I were to sit down with Bruce Caitlin, he would say, yeah, when an archaeologist comes and digs up my remains 1,000 years from now, they're going to go, why does this dude have these weird silicone bags on his skeleton, right? Because they won't biodegrade either. Well, but that's neither. I don't think that's either here nor there from the issue of whether trans is a mental health problem or not. That's a huge other debate. But you're right. The debate is, should mentally ill people be allowed to own firearms, and what constitutes that level of mentally ill, right? What if you're on depression medication? Does that make you disqualified? I mean, I'm enough of a libertarian to say that the cops should not go to your house if you're suicidal, because unless you're a danger to somebody else, all that's going to happen is the police department's going to show up and you're going to force a police officer to take your life through suicide by cop, and you're going to traumatize that person unnecessarily. And I don't think that's right either. I feel bad for people with suicidal ideology, and I think we should have suicide hotlines, and I think we should have therapy. But I'm not sure that sending cops to arrest somebody, or it's such a weird kind of middle ground.
They're coming to take them to bring them to a psychiatric hospital, right?
Yeah, a lot of the times. Yeah.
Well, the ones that want you to take them to the psychiatric hospital because they want a free meal and a safe place to sleep.
I've done that. Yeah, I've had that
that's
too.
a big percentage. There's ones that are want you to come out. They start going off and they want to die, but they don't know how to kill themselves, so they start this suicidal behavior, and they ultimately look for the police to kill them. And that's probably 60. I believe it's 60 to 65% of the people who are suicidal that call the police are looking for the police to do for them what they can't do. And that's not right either for those poor innocent police officers. I know I'm biased, but to make somebody take another person's life, because that person's afraid to do it themselves, is really rough to ask somebody to do.
Yes.
There's been an uptick in especially in LA, because before I retired, there was a big uptick in mental health calls leading to shootings, right? And a lot of them were suicide by cop and stuff like that. And there was a lot of that was leading to shootings. And I fucking had one. And it led to a shooting ultimately. And ultimately down the road, the guy died. But a lot of these things, and I see where Tom's coming from. I do think that mental health is a thing, and we do need to respond. And that's why LA started doing a lot of crazy shit, a lot of stuff that I did not agree with, where you're sending people without police to a spot. And I know the county does it. And I know that MPH, who I know personally, and he goes out there, but he knows, he's a former cop and he knows the risks involved with it, but he always asks for a police escort. And we had a long, crazy talk about mental health, cops coming out, and I've been trying to get him on the show, but a lot of the stuff of mental health calls where he has to go and they want him to go by himself. And he's like, no, I know that if shit goes down, I need cops. So I need to have someone with me. But there are people that are so emboldened where, they're just distraught and downtrodden, and they just want an ear to bend and talk to, and a lot of times they want to die and they just can't do it themselves, and they can't get the stone, so they call 911 because they want cops to come and do it. Right. And I think that leads to a lot of shit on both sides. Cops having PTSD, the citizens and the public just trusting cops because they're like, if I call, you're just going to shoot and kill me. Well, there's all this stuff, and I know you've been a big supporter of cops or law enforcement in general. And I guess my question is, one, how did you become such a strong supporter in law enforcement, and what are your thoughts on the mental health crisis currently surrounding the public as well as the law enforcement community?
Well, I remember when it used to be that cops would come to your elementary school or junior high school, and it would like when parents or when people would come to school to talk about their careers. And people were very respectful towards cops. And over the years, it's outrageous that people think that it's okay for them to attack cops, spit in the face of cops, do all kinds of things, and in a way that where they feel that they are standing up for their people. The attack cops I'm talking about, yes, of course I'm going to attack you. Cops are bad. It went from cops are good to cops are bad in some number of years. And
that's the other, right? Dehumanizing police officers. They're bad.
Right. Yeah. And, I'm amazed that people still become cops. I know there's been a big drop off. People are retiring early and so on, it's really hard to recruit cops, these days. And I certainly, would understand that every day
put it this way. People who are retiring right now, agencies are like, hey, if you decide that it's just not for you and you don't want to retire, you have 3 years to come back. And if you come back, we'll start you right where you left off and you can keep going. You keep contributing in your retirement, the whole 9 yards. It's crazy because there is such a low number of people wanting to come into law enforcement right now. And it's because of the anti-police mindset. the defunding of police. You're not having your agency's not having your back. You're being tried by the media. There's all these things that are going into being a cop, and it's so bad, and it's leading to mental health crisis in law enforcement.
Yes. You know, and the politicians who are so I mean, you know, of course, George Floyd did not help this whole thing. But you know, I mean, it is good that Trump is president for a lot of reasons. One reason is he's bringing back some respect to the police and the National Guard and all of that. And I think that things, you know, I mean, you know, and then whenever it's so hard to figure out. I mean, not only do you have to protect your own life as a cop, but you have to sort of you have to think about. I mean, even if you don't do it consciously, unconsciously, you have to think, if this is someone who's a minority, am I going to get all over the front page and that I purposely killed them because they were Black, for example?
Right.
And I mean, it's just all these things that are outrageous, and I think we need to make big changes. And yes, I think what you're alluding to also is. Just like in the military, in the police, there's a stigma to asking for mental health help, and that needs to be fixed too, because especially today with everything that they have to deal with, you know, there should be no stigma or shame in asking for mental health help, especially with all the things that you see and all of that.
Well, and so let me ask you a question on that then, because I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, because I want to take the stigma out of mental health issues for law enforcement. Obviously, it's a big thing for me. I want cops to be able to ask for help, get the help they need, and still retain their jobs, still be cops, all that kind of stuff if they can. Just like everybody else. I want people to be able to live their lives, get the help they need, and move on, right? But do you see an issue with mental illness becoming an identity? Right? Like there's this section where the people who really need help or want help and are afraid to ask for it. But then there's this other section where people are taking their mental health situation and that it becomes their entire identity.
Yes,
and you know what I mean?
Yes. Now, you don't mean necessarily cops doing that.
No. I mean, no. So the cops have the opposite problem. Like every cop I know, they're like, no, I don't want to talk about mental health because if I do, my department finds out. They're going to take my badge and my gun, put me on the rubber gun squad, and I'm fired.
Right.
That's
the stigma.
That's the stigma for law enforcement.
Not the case, but the stigma.
Right. Well, no, I mean, a lot of times that is the case, unfortunately. But there seems to be this other movement in mental health circles where, well, it's okay for these people or whatever. We ignore mental health over here, but then there's this other thing where it's like there's so many people that their mental health struggle becomes their entire identity.
Yes, starting with or including the rooms in colleges, the not safe rooms. What do you call it?
The safe spaces.
Like safe spaces. Yes. You know,
yes.
where they can do coloring books and all of that.
Oh, no way.
I mean, that's like, yes, that's an example of people just taking it, owning it, like, you know, being proud of it. I'm mentally ill and I'm proud, or I'm sensitive and I'm like, never before did we have things that said before, like a television show or something on social media. You know, this contains some words that may be offensive or some pictures that may be, I mean, you know, that people are snowflakes, you know,
right?
All this stuff. Yeah, that's right. It may be, but you know, I don't know. People are just, but yeah, I mean, that's part of the extreme left's movement too. To whether it's trans or just something else, or even parents, you know, like kids, all of a sudden everybody has ADHD. You know, that's not really true. It's parents are bringing kids to doctors and psychiatrists these days. I am ashamed of my profession. There are some good psychiatrists. Let me just put that out there. I'm not ashamed of all the psychiatrists in the world. But psychiatry has changed a lot. And by that, I mean that, and this happened because of insurance companies pulling back on what they're willing to pay for treatment. And
right. Well, don't get me started on insurance companies.
So some psychiatrists since the insurance companies figured out that it was cheaper to pay a psychologist or a social worker or a marriage and family therapist, who don't have as many years of school as a psychiatrist, cheaper to pay them to do therapy. So what did psychiatrists do? I mean, they made it almost impossible, really, for psychiatrists to do therapy, like an hour.
You can only basically you prescribe. That's it, right?
And so, well, not me, but
I mean the profession, not you, the royal you.
yes. I mean, so that's what psychiatrists they dealt with it by becoming pill pushers and seeing patients. Because if you see somebody for 45 minutes to an hour to do talk therapy, then you can only see like 8 in a day, right?
Right.
But if you see people for 15 minutes or half an hour and you just ask about their symptoms and then you throw a prescription at them, you can see a lot more patients, in a day.
Right.
And so you can make a lot more money. And so that is what they gave into. Now, that is why that is a big factor in why there are so many crazy people walking around these days, because they are not getting the help that they need. They're getting one, and then they come back like in a month or 2 or 3, whatever, they were told. And they're not better, of course, because they didn't get talk therapy and they didn't get to the root of the problem. And so now the psychiatrist throws another prescription at them, and so now they're taking 2 medications. And
now they're suicidal.
What?
I said, and now they're suicidal.
Well, yes, and or homicidal, right. And I know about this from my own experience, because one thing I do is I work as a forensic psychiatrist and expert witness. So I have done a number of cases where people have like committed suicide or hurt somebody else because they never got the help. They went to a psychiatrist, but they never got the right help. And it's really this whole mental health system is really crazy. It really needs to be adjusted. That plus the closing of the mental hospitals, the state mental hospitals.
Yes.
Which is why we have all these homeless people, and if they're not homeless, they're in jail or in prison, because they needed to be in a psychiatric hospital for a longer period of time to get well.
So, yes. So I will tell you, the city I worked in, and you'll probably know the city when I tell you this. The city I worked in still has the state hospital for the criminally insane. And I always tell people that this hospital, if Hannibal Lecter were a real person, that's where they would have put him, right?
Yeah.
It's a hospital, but it has double fence, concertina wire, towers. They had a quote unquote police force that was 3 times the size of our city police force, right? They were sexually violent predators. They were really bad people, messed up people. This is where Ed Kemper was when he was 15 and he killed his grandparents. And then 5 years later, they're like, no, he's fine. Let's release him. And then he turned into the co-ed killer. And, like, so there's that, right? There's that, the asylums, the mental hospitals, the fact that we're taking people who are mentally ill and are homicidal or violent, and we're saying, well, just take your medication, and then sending them home to parents who can't manage them, can't force them. They self-medicate with alcohol and weed.
Right.
And weed is a hallucinogen, and so you're giving a hallucinogen and alcohol to somebody who's mentally ill, and then you're like, why did he go crazy and kill 2 people?
Right, exactly. Right. And of course, nowadays the marijuana has a lot, has all kinds of stuff.
Right.
I was going to ask you about this, because I know you deal with a lot with cops, and you're a really big supporter of law enforcement, things like that. I was talking to this lady. Her son has schizophrenia. And she's a barber. She cuts a lot of people's hair, a lot of cops' hair. And every time I go and see her, she talks to me about her son, yada, yada, whatever. But she was telling me that she's been speaking to a lot of cops because of her son. And they've been telling her, because a lot of them work for Twin Towers or any type of like LA County detention facility or jail. And they are seeing a big uptick and so is their mental health, big uptick and mental health related issues. We used to call it like meth-induced psychosis, but now it's being created by marijuana because of the chemicals that they're using, like the butane to make the honey oil or whatever that they're ingesting through a vape, because it's unregulated, and it's causing them to have mental illness episodes and creating psychosis. Have you seen a lot of that, or do you know anything about that?
Yes. Well, even without the things that that are now in the pot. When I was a psychiatric resident, and I was realizing that I left that out when you were asking me how many years after
your residency.
It was a year of medicine, straight medicine internship, and then 3 years of psychiatry residency at Bellevue. That was before.
Oh my God, Bellevue, really?
Yes, that was like an amazing place, a great place.
Yeah.
I mean, you see everything, and the Bellevue emergency room is like ground zero for crazy. So when I was at Bellevue, even back then, I'll never forget this case. It was the first case of this that I saw. A young man, I think he was like in 21, 22, and he didn't have any psychiatric problem beforehand, and he just went to a party, and he had some pot. I think that was just regular pot, back then.
Right.
And he got psychotic. It tripped off. It caused his schizophrenia to manifest. And that is the thing with a lot of these people. They don't know that they have, an old uncle or grandparent or great grandparent or someone in their family, cousin once removed, who had some kind of mental illness like schizophrenia or bipolar manic depressive disorder. And then they just have regular old pot, and it trips it off. It causes it to manifest. Because not everybody who has the genes for these psychoses becomes schizophrenic or bipolar.
Right. What do they call it? It causes them to emerge or to yeah.
Are you thinking to have a first break? And then when you have a first break, it becomes a lot easier to have subsequent breaks.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Ideally, you would try not to have any breaks. Right. So yes, this is a big problem, and I hope that they don't. I know some states have legalized it, and I know Trump is talking about legalizing it federally, and I hope he doesn't, because this is a real problem. It's not just a fun drug. Even people. I mean, the thing is, people who it's not the usual druggie who just uses pot, but that is addiction, and that's just as bad. And either not only because it can cause these underlying psychoses to manifest, but also because some people are addicted where they think they can't go to sleep unless they smoke a joint. Like it becomes an addiction, just like alcohol and other addiction.
Right. Well, and doctor, people don't understand that the pot from back in the day was 15 to 35%. Like when your parents or grandparents in the 60s and 70s were smoking a doobie and listening to the Grateful Dead, it was 15 to 35% THC. And then High Times came out and taught people how to increase the THC output of these plants. And all of a sudden you had all these home chemist farmers, and it's just like meth, right? Methamphetamine didn't used to be ice. It used to be methamphetamine, and then it became crystal methamphetamine, right? And it was DNL and blah, 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 blah. I don't want to get into it, but same thing with pot. Pot was 15 to 35% THC. And now the average vape pen, the average pot strain is 80 to 90% THC. So you're talking about 3 times the strength of what is in sufficient doses. It's a hallucinogen. It is a mild. It is the same kind of idea as LSD, and you give it to people at these dosages, and these kids, like we see kids, they'll hit the vape pen and they don't have any control. It doesn't hurt the way pot smoke does. It's not hot. It doesn't make them cough. It tastes like strawberries or waffles or whatever. And then all of a sudden they overdose and they're high and they're hallucinating and they have a psychotic break.
Yes. And and you know what it is? It's just an oral dependency. It's people who did not get enough nurturance from their mother or their father. from their parents. They weren't nurtured enough. And so that's what the vape pen is. I want oral gratification. And it's not that you have to be breastfed, but even a bottle fed child, you get the warmth, you get the snuggles, all of that. And they didn't get those.
Right.
Well, I do have to say, even though I was a cop, I did smoke a good amount of pot, and whatever, I'm retired. I don't care. I didn't get a lot of affection from my mom, and it didn't make me a fucking nut.
Well, I mean, here's the thing: you keep
out there that are going to be like,
that's back to the not all terrorists are jihadists. And
I know. I'm just saying, like, there's going to be that whole. I'm not saying that I'm going to do that right now. I'm not going to say I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm just saying that there's going to be that whole group of people that are going to be, hey.
Well, I'm just talking about it's oral gratification. It has to do with what happened to you in your first year of life, whether it's breast or bottle or snuggles or whatever. But it's like people who drink alcohol. It's the same thing. They are trying to get this oral gratification.
100%. And I agree. It can be addictive. And people, my doctor told me, hey, if you can't sleep, go to the dispensary and grab weed. And I was like,
really?
Yeah, 100%. Oh, yeah. I swear to God. And that was at UCLA.
I believe that.
So, and these are world-renowned doctors for a specific thing. And it wasn't for like mental health or anything like that. It was for orthopedic. And I was like, hey, man, you gave me some sleeping medication while I had my surgery. I'm having a hard time sleeping. I've always had a hard time sleeping due to a lot of things, maybe post-traumatic stress or shit that I've seen in law enforcement or whatever. I've always had a hard time sleeping. And I was like, can I get some more of those sleeping meds at that low dose? And it was Ambien. And he was like, I can't because it's addictive, but you can do, you can go to the dispensary and get some weed.
That is not not a good doctor, shall we say?
Like, I'm good, dude.
That's a hypnotic, right? Like, yeah.
First of all, Ambien is a very dangerous. It's one thing. There are lots of different kinds of sleeping pills, but Ambien is the worst because it makes you go out and it can make you go out and do all kinds of things that you don't know you're doing. I had cases like that too. A woman, an older woman, who was having trouble sleeping, and they didn't try other things. They gave her Ambien, and sure enough, she went out. She rode her bike, and wait a minute, was she driving a car or a bike? I don't remember, but let's say a car. And she rode into someone on a bike, or vice versa. I don't know, but she had an accident. She was being sued for a ton of money, and she didn't even remember doing this.
Yeah, wow. I've had people, Chuck. I think I've told you, I had a case where a guy called us at first thing in the morning, and he wanted us to take a burglary report because his garage was trashed. And somebody broke into his garage, and he thought somebody had burglarized his garage. And as I'm taking the report, his wife steps into the garage behind him and sees what's happening. Her eyes get big, and she starts giving me the stop it, cut it out signal. And I said, sir, do you have something or other? And I got him to leave so I could ask his wife what the hell she was doing. And she goes, he did it. He took Ambien last night. He got out of bed and he came down to the garage, and I heard him trashing it. And I was coming down to tell him, but he'd already called you guys. He's the one who did. I also had a mother. It was 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. She was driving her child to school. School didn't start till 8:45. She was driving her 6-year-old to school at 5 o'clock in the morning. And she thought it was time for her kid to go to school. She was high as hell on Ambien. The kid's like, I don't know what's going on. And I said, well, all right, we'll get you back to your house. And she goes, but what about my brother? And I'm like, and I'm looking at the car. She's the only kid in the car. The bitch left an 18-month-old at home.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
It was totally disassociated. It's a hypnotic. It's dangerous.
Yeah. It's
so, Doc, we're running out of time. I really want to have you back because this is, I still want to ask you the big question for me, which is, are kids born bad? But that's a whole other topic. So let's talk about the terrorism book, and let's get back to the terrorist therapist as we close out. And I wanted to ask, like, if people are going to get this book, or if people are going to, even if they don't get the book, what is the takeaway for people when it comes to terrorism and coping skills in this day and age? What do you want to tell people about that?
Well, it's important to sort of build resilience. I mean, not just because there are going to be terror attacks, but in general, in life, it's good to build resilience. And what I do actually in this book is I have at the adult section, I have 88 things that parents can do to raise their child to be very resilient. And then in the kids section, I have 10 things that kids can do for themselves to become more resilient.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the things are like for the kids have to do with what they eat and just getting enough sleep, some basic kinds of things. Also studying in school so they can get a job that'll help the country to, be stronger, blah, blah, blah. Some basic, not watch violent movies or play violent video games, that kind of thing. So it's important so it's not just to look at it it's not just you need these things in case there's another terrorist attack, but like just for life as well. But there will be, things there are, the terrorists do plan to not just overrun Europe, but they are here, as I was talking about earlier, and they've been, becoming stronger, being promoted and all that in all these areas that control our life: politics, the squad, teachers, and media, who purposely don't show us what's happening in these other countries. So I think that it's really, I think it's important to teach kids about this. I actually, we're going to be having, we're almost at 9/11, and every 9/11 for the past 5 years, I created 5 years ago a music video that is about terrorism. And the first 4 years, first 3 or 4 years, it was like a warm and fuzzy, why we need to remember 9/11, et cetera, et cetera. Then last year, I sort of changed it a bit, and I made it to be more, it's warm and fuzzy to a point, but it's also a warning of just how terrorists are in our streets and how it's really imminent. And then, I put the video on a mobile billboard truck, and it goes around Manhattan. I had it going around Washington, D.C. some years too. And so this year on 9/11, it's going to be in Manhattan, going around Ground Zero and other places in Manhattan. And people can see it on my website if they're not going to be in New York. The website being Terrorist Therapist.
Oh, I was just about to ask you. Thank you.
Yes, terroristtherapist.com. You can see the 9/11 music video, and also I made one for 10/7 too, and that's there on the website as well.
And people can see your book, your TV appearances. They can see the books that are available. They can get access to your podcast, and they can contact you through, again, terroristtherapist.com. And this is not a website if you are a terrorist needing therapy. Although if you are a terrorist, you might need therapy. Well, you probably do need therapy.
That is true.
Dr. Lieberman, thank you very much for being on the show. I like I said, it's fascinating, especially because I find the study of the human brain. I think it's it's in such an infancy, right? Like it's been, since I happen to be a Jungian, but it's been such it's been what, 100 years or more, a little bit, that we've been working on this, but in the history of mankind, it's such a drop in the bucket. So I just know that we keep learning more and more and more and more and more every day. And so it fascinates me. So I appreciate you being on the show. We'd love to have you back.
Sure.
Thank you very much. And if you guys need, if you guys need help dealing with issues of violence, or if you need help dealing with issues of, I guess, helping yourself keep calm and carry on. And I love what you said about resilience, because we are not teaching children resilience anymore.
Right.
We are not teaching them you will be okay, right? We that is such a huge thing. So I would love to see you write a book just about resilience. I would read it twice, and then I would buy all the copies for my kids. It's Dr. Carol Lieberman, terroristtherapist.com. And we really appreciate you having you on.
And I really enjoyed talking with you both.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, go ahead. Take us out. You have the dedication this week?
I do. Yeah. So I just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Lieberman, for coming on. I hope you can come back for a part 2. We can get into, mental health and law enforcement and stuff like that. That's really big on mine. And I know Tom has a lot of, questions to ask and things to ask, like, are kids born bad? crazy thing. I just had that conversation with my wife the other day, and I was talking to her about it. I think we saw something on the TV, and we were talking about it. But today goes the dedication. I know we normally give the dedication to our guests, but I have today's dedication, and this goes out to David Ross. Police officer David Ross was shot and killed responding to an active shooter at the CVS at the 520 Avenue Place in Atlanta near the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, at Emory University. The suspect was brandishing multiple guns, firing at the windows of the CDC building around 4:50 p.m. When law enforcement arrived, he turned and fired at the officers. Officer Ross was struck and succumbed to his wounds at Emory University Hospital. Another officer received non-life-threatening injuries. The suspect was found on the second floor of the CVS with self-inflicted gunshot wound. He died at the scene. Officer Ross was a United States Marine Corps veteran and has served with the DeKalb County Police Department for 11 months. He is survived by his expectant wife, 2 children, mother, and brother. He was 33 years old. His tour was 11 months. His badge number is 3819, and he was a military veteran of the United States Marine Corps.
Well, rest easy, brother. We got it from here. And once again, Dr. Carroll, thank you for being here. And until our next episode, come home with your shield or on it.